Church leaders, it's time to protect your congregations against shooters that can walk into your churches and begin to stack up bodies because your congregation is easy to kill. You know, back decades ago, churches all across America had to come to terms with the fact that churches are trusting environments and they attract pedophiles and other sexual predators. We came to terms across America. Again, churches all across America began to do criminal background checks and take double layers of security, applying them to children's ministry and teens ministry in churches everywhere. That included significant criminal background checks. Workers and leaders doubling up to go accompany kids different places in the buildings. We understood the necessity for strong protections, physical protections, for our children. We lock doors, turn on alarms. We take all kinds of measures and all kinds of protection for our children, our teenagers, and other people in our congregations under different conditions. But when it comes to shooters, people who will walk into a building and kill people indiscriminately, which obviously has taken place regularly over the last few decades, concern from most church leaders lasts about 2 weeks after a highly publicized shooting. Concern and awareness when they're confronted with news personnel or people asking questions, because that makes them sound like they're actually doing something. But the reality is, usually all that turns up is temporary and token security right after it happens, and then it disappears. It's just back to business. Statistically, we know where shooters go. We know where mass killers go. We know, as distorted as they are, they're not stupid. We know where they go, and we know that they pick targets where they don't expect any resistance, any armed security at all. But hey, church leaders, they got too much spiritual stuff going on to have to deal with armed security and dealing with a potential deadly shooter. I mean, after all, it couldn't happen to us, could it? You know, churches and leaders have too many concerns. It's got to be budgeted. A security team, you'd have to budget for that. And then there would have to be insurance and legal concerns and licensing and training. And, besides that, God will take care of us. We can preach that until bullets start going through the bodies and heads of people sitting in their chairs and pews, all facing one direction, all there to worship, all trusting. Whatever your title is as a leader, your pastor, an elder, a deacon, a director, whatever your title is insofar as your position as a church leader, you are responsible for preserving the safety and life of the people in your congregation. If you can walk into your church prior to any service where a crowd is going to dependably gather, they're all going to go into one place and look in one direction. If you can walk into that church on Sunday morning, when you go through the front door or the side door or whichever entrance you go in, and you can't immediately see armed security present, no matter where you go in that church, then negligence is already in place in that congregation. Because the biggest travesty in these cases where people are shot dead in churches by a gunman is that church leaders took no action to protect that congregation before it ever happened. They took no action to bring in armed, trained, visible security. No action equals dead people when a gunman comes in. In 2015, Dylan Roof walked into the Emmanuel AME Church and killed 9 congregation members there. Apparently all because they were black. Now, the point there is that Dylan, as maniacal as he was the only white guy on the residence at that point, as far as I know. Nobody saw him creeping around outside. Nobody noticed him coming in. He walked in to a congregation that was essentially a black congregation and killed 9 people in that congregation. God did not stop him, but he could have been stopped. Your church is not safe. if every entrance to every building on your campus where people are present is not watched and secured while those crowds are there. Secured meaning that if a gunman came in, they would be stopped. More likely, or more importantly, that if they identified armed security, that it would deter them from ever coming in and trying it in the first place. In 2017, Devin Kelley walked into a Baptist church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, and killed 26 members of that congregation, including 8 members of one family. We're talking about men, women, kids, everybody. 26 people, 8 members of one family alone. God did not stop him, but he could have been stopped. Your church is not safe. Your church is not secure if the congregation has not been addressed with safety protocols, security procedures, and even how to escape the building in case of an emergency. But of course, to discuss safety protocols and security measures with the congregation, you'd have to have some. If you don't have them, if the congregation hasn't been addressed, if they don't have printed material they can pick up and review, your church is not safe. It's open to a mass killer. December 2019, the West Freeway Church of Christ in White Settlement, Texas. A man walked in with a wig on and a fake beard and a long coat. Congregation members, security team members immediately noticed him and noticed that there was something wrong. He came in under the pretense that he was engaging and going in to partake of their communion service. He talked to a couple of the security guys and said a few things to a couple of people. Then he stepped back, pulled out a shotgun, and killed 2 men. But this time, God did stop him. God stopped him with a servant who carried a gun, who served on the security team as the leader of the security team, and was willing to put his life on the line to save more people, because it would have been a bloodbath. Because after he shot 2 people in cold blood, all the folks around him in the pews dropped down on the floor. He could have turned and just began blowing people apart. But that security team member from a significant distance pulled his gun and killed that intruder, killed that shooter with 1 shot to the head. So yes, God did stop this one, just like he would have stopped the rest of them if people had been simply ready with the security measures necessary. 2 people did die because there was a fault in this security team's procedures. But the body count could have been much greater if there was no security team and no firearms available to stop him. People there willing to serve with the tools necessary to provide adequate security in the world we live in today. If you don't have it, your church is not secure. The people in your congregations are not safe. Church leaders, to be clear, your church is not safe. Your people are in danger if during your services or anytime there is a crowd on your campus, that armed security is not available everywhere people are present. Not just one token security guard walking the halls, walking across the campus, going from building to building, but security that's continually watching every area where people are present. If you don't have it, your congregation is not safe. I've given 3 highly visible church shootings there that were visible in the news, but there have been countless attacks on houses of God. Statistics have been compiled since 1999 as to the increase in church shootings, and that includes individuals, domestic disputes that broke out on a campus, church offices being robbed and assaulted, church campuses being assaulted, church congregations being shot, pastors being killed. Countless attacks on churches over the years. We are at a point where token resistance is not acceptable. Effective, armed, present, visible, expansive security is the only thing that makes a church secure. The reality is that maniacs live among us. Token resistance is not sufficient. People of faith, being people of faith, does not mean we can leave the world of reality A world in which the church is facing a clear and present danger that cannot be ignored responsibly. Church leaders, I know I'm being redundant here, but if you do not have armed, visible security that covers every inch of your campus, every inch of the buildings where people are present on your campus during crowded events and services, your church is not secure, your congregation is not safe. Your friends, your spiritual family, your natural family could be killed because of your lack of action in simply developing that security team that is so necessary in the day in which we live. And the three examples that I just gave a few minutes ago, these were relatively small churches. These are not great big campuses. The Sutherland Springs was a small church, 26 people killed in just moments. You cannot ignore it any longer and be responsible, be a leader, a true leader in that church. One final observation, and I hope I've gotten your attention. I hope you know this is not going to go away. The next killer is out there right now, ready. All he's doing right now is trying to decide where the most beneficial place for him to land is, where he can stack up the most bodies and create the biggest bloodbath. As a church leader, it's your responsibility to make sure he's not able to do it in your congregation. For the sake of everybody that walks through the doors of your church, act now. Pull together the resources. Develop an armed church security team that's sufficient to cover your church in the event that some maniac should come wandering on your campus. The best thing that can happen is that he's deterred because he sees armed, visible church security. And if he's not deterred, that there's somebody there with the tools, training, experience, and courage to stop him in his tracks if he starts. It's the only acceptable solution in this day we live in, and it's not going away.